welcome back to Coaching Your Way Through Life and Business. That was an absolutely amazing segment that we just had, and we are going to continue. So our next presenter, we have Zakiya Monique. Zakiya Monique, she is a master life and relationship coach. So Zakiya, take it away.
Hello, hello, hello. As Beverly said, I am Zakiya Monique, Master Life and Relationship Strategist. I'm also a transformational speaker, and I'm here today to help one of my clients to get through some situations that she's dealing with so that she can get on her path to purpose, because that's exactly what I do. Relationships are the number one impediment to purpose. And so typically when we get the relationship stuff out of the way, we're able to then progress to purpose. And so today I want to talk with my client just to help her get through some of those issues. So good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
All right, all right. So, the first thing that I want to do before I let you go, because I want you to do more talking than me, but before I get to that point, I want to manage your expectations, because that's one of the things that I take very, very, very seriously as a coach. The first thing I want you to do is take a look at what's behind you here. As a coach, I wanted you to visually see what I'm going to be doing with you. One of the biggest misconceptions that I have is that people think that in one session we get it all together. And I don't want you to walk away thinking, didn't quite get what I thought I was going to get. So here's what I do for you. So you have some of these things going on inside of you, some of the toxicity. It may not be all of these things, but you have some of these things going on. And what can happen is you see the fruit. Now, I'm not good at drawing, so that's okay. But you see some of the fruit here. We tend to think that if we can just pull some of those fruits off, it'll be fine. But we have to go down to the root instead. And so today what I want to do is I want to get to the root issues so that the fruit doesn't continue to grow rotten, because you see the middles of all of those fruit are rotten. So here's what I want to do for that. We have an exercise here called God, Self, and Others. So I'm going to put this up on the board. And what I want you to do first is I want you to tell me why we're here today. What are the issues that you have with God, or struggles that you may have? What are the struggles that you have with self? What are the struggles that you have with others? I want you to take a few moments and just write this down, and then we'll have more of a further conversation about those issues in just a second.
Okay.
Okay?
Got that. God. So just the nature of my relationship with God?
Yes. What are some of your struggles with God?
My struggles with God. I'll say that. Self. Others. I would say those are my top 5.
Okay, that's good enough. So let's get to it, because I want to now have you do a little bit of talking about why we're here. But the first thing I want you to understand is we're not going to go into God's, self, and others today. But I had you to do this exercise for a reason that we'll wrap into just a few minutes. But tell me, why are we here today? What was the straw that made you seek out a coach? Because you're a coach, correct?
Yeah.
And we're dispelling the myth that coaches don't need coaches. Okay, because just because you're proficient and an expert in one area does not mean that you don't need a coach in another area. There's nothing wrong with that. So why are we here today? What was the tipping point for you in your relationships that made you say, I need to seek someone out?
Like you say, as a coach, I myself know the importance of having that external view in terms of different areas of your life. And for me, I consider myself a free spirit, and so sometimes I guess the expectations of others don't quite match mine, and so the tendency is that there's friction, there's rubbing each other the wrong way. So it's about getting to a space where I'm able to nurture that relationship.
Okay. And so now you're saying, I want to better nurture my relationships with others. Okay. And so we're here today about others, but I'm going to show you how they all tie in together. So take a look at what you wrote. So you see how doubt with God, doubt with self, and then you have openness and expectations. All of those, lack of faith, all of those come back to an issue with trust.
Okay.
You doubt God, why? Because you don't trust Him. Not fully. We don't like to hear that, but not fully.
At times,
Yes. Fully.
Yes.
And some things are harder to trust than others. Can we agree?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
because sometimes money is not your issue or whatever. So you're like, oh, I trust God to give me money. But then maybe you have an health problem and you're like, I don't know if He's going to heal me or whatever. So sometimes we have trust issues with God in specific areas. But if you doubt God, then ultimately you don't have a full measure of trust. Then you look over here at doubt, self, lack of faith in self. So that's saying you don't trust yourself. Then you have an issue with openness with people. Why? Because you think they'll reject you, and ultimately trust, right? Expectations hinge on what? The investment of our expectations lead to disappointment, and it leads to us not trusting people. So overall, what I want you to understand today is that whatever you deal with in one area, it typically spills over. Okay,
Gotcha, yeah.
It spills over, and so today, if we repair the others, then we will ultimately help you deal with the others, the God and self as well. Okay. So let's talk about trust. Okay, because
Yeah.
can we agree that that's a major issue right now?
Yes.
Okay. So if trust is a major issue, my first question to you is, because now going back to the tree, when did you have your first issue with trust? As far back as you can remember. Who betrayed your trust first, or as far back as you can remember? When did you perceive a difference in you trusting others? Has it always been this way?
No, probably about 12 years ago. That was a work situation.
Okay. So you had a work situation, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because what we don't understand sometimes as professional development coaches is that what we do personally, as professional development coaches, we don't understand that personal development fuels professional development. And so we'll get into a work situation and think we don't need to invest in our professional development anymore, and then we find that we have problems. And so there was a work situation that happened. Overall, did this situation cause you to start changing yourself? And
I
how
would
you-
say yes, it did.
Okay. And so if one situation happened in one area of your life, why was it so impactful for you to now be at this point?
I'm not sure I followed the question.
So what was so impactful about that situation that caused you now to have this massive issue with trust? Because I wanted you to take me back to the issue that changed you, that you could remember.
So for me, it's where I had the choice of standing up for what I believed in and my integrity, as opposed to the environment in which I found myself working at the time, and the fact that I had to make a choice between what was right and fitting in. I had to make the decision, and I said before, I always see myself as a free spirit, and my choice was to break out of that box by standing up for what I believed in. So the fact that the system did not provide the support or stand up to the truth of what was the situation, that made me sort of question other people's integrity and their willingness to say this is the truth regardless of the consequences.
And it's typically, sometimes it's a trauma or it's one specific issue. That's why I said take me back to when it started, because if you take me back to when it started, we can start at that point to then move forward and to figure out how to unravel that thing and get you back to where you need to be, because ultimately that was one situation that happened at one time in your life. It should not dictate everything forward.
Yeah.
But you're human. And throughout this process of working with me, I want you to remain human. Human enough to say, you know what, I do have that issue. Human enough to understand that, hey, it's okay to be transparent. Human enough to understand that there's no judgment. No judgment, okay? And I am going to be transparent throughout this as well, because I had to go back. I never asked you to do anything that I wouldn't do, but I had to do the same thing, and the betrayal came from my mother. And so when you have a betrayal from a mother, it then tweaks, because this is the person you're supposed to trust. It tweaked everything that I saw in people. So if you moving forward now that you know, okay, that issue changed me. it made me change my outlook on everything pretty much. Not everybody, but everything, because now I've started to doubt God. Now I'm starting to doubt myself and the lack of faith. I have a lack of faith in myself. And now I definitely don't trust other people to some degree, because you probably won't stand with me if I have to stand by myself again. You know, if I have to stand for what's right again, I should say. So in moving forward, what have you done so far to deal with this issue?
I've been working on my personal development and my personal growth journey since then. That was the trigger for it. And I've learned to love and accept myself and know that my truth is okay. And it's okay to hold on to that and to stand firm in that. And it's about now moving past that stage to extend the same to others. And that was the main point, is extending that to others, is that you can be in your stead and I don't have to be offended, because oftentimes it comes down to offense. I'm offended that you didn't stand with me. So let's get to the root of some of the issues. I'm offended that I had to stand by myself. I'm offended that no one stood with me. I'm offended that no one protected me. And sometimes that goes back even further. So let me ask you, did you have any triggers with childhood? Not that I recall, no.
Not that you recall?
No.
Okay. And so when you think about this work situation, how do you think that you could have done anything different? Could you?
My only other option would be to deny my truth, and that was not an option for me.
Absolutely. And that should never be an option. So now let's move forward. We know where we're dealing with. Trust is a major issue. In terms of trusting God, how do we move forward with that, in your view?
In my view?
Because I'm going to tell you my view. I'm going to tell you my view. I'm going to tell you my view. But I want you to tell me, how can we move forward? Because you know what you're doing right now. And see, that's why I ask you the question first, because you know what you're doing right now, and you know also what you're not doing. Okay? Because none of us are perfect, right? None of us read our word every day. None of us pray all day, every day. None of us do everything right. That's why we have grace. And so now, what could you do, in your view, to strengthen the trust that you have in God?
I think more and more reminding myself that He's always come through for me.
And so how do you remind yourself?
Affirmations. I do a lot of journaling, being a bit more consistent with my journaling. Reminders around the house works for me. And a big thing for me is having the opportunity to share that with others.
Okay, so fellowship. Now, you've said affirming, journaling, and fellowshipping. And so might I add, or I have permission to add to that list. Okay. What about actually pulling certain scriptures out and really taking the time to hone in on what those scriptures are really about?
Yeah.
Right? So let's talk about certain scriptures that you can pull out and you can eat those, and I mean really, really meditate on the word, because the Bible says if you meditate on the word day and night, you're defined by that, right? So what can we do in that area? Are you reading consistently? Are you taking God at His word? Do you know how to stand on the word?
I do know how to stand in the word. That's something that I need to get back to. I don't do that as much as I should.
Okay.
Or would like to.
Right. And so it doesn't have to be 60 chapters a week. We tend to start so high. I got to read the whole book of Genesis tonight, and I got to read the whole book of Exodus by next week, and all of that, because I got to keep up with the calendar. The calendar said I got to do this. No, I want you to be led by the Spirit, because sometimes we need to stay in this section, because God is doing something in us, through us, to us, and with us about that thing. And how many of us know the Word of God shines like a diamond? Every time that you see it, you see a different aspect of it. So what I want you to do in that area, okay, because again, I just think that we can take some small pieces. We're here to focus more on others, but I think you can do a little something in each area that will help you strengthen the others. Because when you trust God, you trust Him to bring the right people in your square to trust. When you trust yourself, you trust your judgment of character. And then you can fully trust others, because you've paired them together. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that meditating on the word, not putting not putting stressful requirements on yourself to say, I got to read this. No, follow your spirit in what you read and really, really hone in on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, with self, tell me about that. Why do you doubt you? Why do you have a lack of faith in yourself? What decisions have led to that?
Sometimes I haven't always been the best communicator
Okay.
in the way that I interact with others. So sometimes I question whether I'm going about that the right way.
Okay. What do you struggle with in communications? Listening or speaking?
Speaking.
Okay, because there's never a failure to communicate, right? That's one of the best things I've ever heard in my life. There's never a failure to communicate because either you are telling me something with your eyes, you are telling me something with your body language, you are telling me something, even if you never speak a word.
Yeah.
And so you're saying, I don't verbalize because you're telling people what you feel, even if you. I just told you a lot. So communication, what do you struggle with? Is it verbalizing?
Verbalizing.
Is it
verbalizing in what I deem to be appropriate and effective ways?
Okay. Why? We digging. We digging. We digging. I'm gonna challenge you.
Because so I've moved from a space where, as a free spirit, as I like to call myself, I've been really blunt and often inconsiderate of other people's feelings. To a space where I'm now trying to tone that down, speaking my truth, but doing so in a way that is mindful of others as much as I would like them to be mindful of me.
So that last piece, mindful of me, did something happen that made you have that epiphany?
I can't pinpoint it, but I've been walking my journey for a while. So for me, I know that, and a big part of the work that I do with my clients is about helping them to realize as much as we need to honor ourselves, we need to allow others the space to honor them by honoring them as well. And so for me, I seek to do the same thing in my own relationship, not just impose it on my clients, but to also walk the same truth that I speak to them.
So what's the real struggle? You want to just
The real struggle is about being mindful to the extent that I want to be. So, so yes, I'm mindful, but it's about being mindful. I suppose maybe for a certain period of time, or in there's some situations that I am more mindful of than others. So it's about finding that balance that it can be a bit more consistent.
Okay, and so the issue is not verbalizing. The issue is verbalizing correctly, because I don't want to say it and hurt your feelings, but I'm going to say it. And here's the thing that I want you to release. What should I say release? Here's the thing I want you to understand. It's okay sometimes for you to hurt their feelings as a coach, but not intentionally. Okay? And what I mean by that is sometimes I have to give you the tough stuff. Okay? I have to give you the tough stuff, and I can't be so concerned about the bluntness. Because I have to sometimes give it to you that way, because I don't know anyone who loves their coach all the time.
Yes, but I don't suppose it's about my coaching relationship. It's more about my personal relationships.
Okay. You mentioned coaching. So you want to, personally.
Because for me, I can be quite blunt, and it's not even so much about hurting their feelings, but it's about the fact that I do it without consideration, and I walk in a space where I seek to be to others what I want them to be to me. So it's about getting into that space where I'm consistently showing others that compassion, that consideration, that mindfulness that I want to see them show to me and to show out to others as well.
Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some communication exercises, because how many of us know that when we ask God for faith, he typically gives us challenges so that we can exercise that. So now that you said communication is your issue, I want you to, over the next week, as a matter of fact, I want you to start looking at, are you an active listener, or do you listen to respond? So this is just off the top of my head that I'm giving you this, but I'm going to give you some more in-depth stuff that I have. But I want you to stop and think, am I listening to respond, or am I calculating a response, or am I really listening and hearing you? So meaning, am I hearing what's not being said? personally.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not talking about coaches, but am I listening and hearing you? And then when I respond, I can consider what I did not hear you say. So a lot of times for me, when I hear a young person saying to me, hey, I love him and I know he beats me or whatever, I want to say, hey, leave him. I do. I want to just, but I'm also listening to what's not being said, and that provokes my compassion. So over the next week, I want you to assess your active listening, because oftentimes listening will help us lead to compassion, and compassion will give us the consideration. All right.
Gotcha.
And last but not least, let's wrap up on others. Now, again, these two are going to contribute to your others, okay? And I want you to pay attention to your first response with other people when they start to get close to you. Do you shun away immediately? Do you assess everyone the same way? How do you invest your expectations? Because we're responsible for that. Okay? We are responsible for how we invest our expectations, but what we'll do is we'll get upset and say, God, why did you do this? Or what happened to this? Or what happened with that? It's never our fault. Pay attention to the red flags so that you don't get disappointed. Okay, does that make sense?
It does, yes.
In your relationships? Okay, and so then I want us to come back and follow up with the homework, okay, because I know it's a lot, but again, we're root digging,
Yeah.
okay, and that's important to me, is that we get down to the root of some things so that we start to see better fruit.
Okay.
Cool?
Yeah.
I like that. All right. So I think we are good at this point. Next week, we'll meet again. We'll come back. We'll see how it works.
Yeah.
And I'm just so happy that we have been here today. I hope you're pleased with what we have gone through.
I am indeed. Look forward to next week's session.
Yes, and here's the thing. I don't want to ever flood you, but I do want to give you bite-sized pieces, because you can't eat the whole elephant. You can't eat the elephant whole, but you can't eat the whole elephant bite by bite. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Okay.
So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you guys. And until next time, see you later.
See you later.